wondering how you can train your dog to help you possibly prevent migraine attacks by letting you know hours in advance before a migraine attack hits? If so, you're in the right place. I'm here to share with you, from migraineur to migraineur, a structured, free, step-by-step process on how to send train your dog so that he can eventually become your migraine alert service dog. In this video, we're going back to basics so we can clarify 3 essential things. First, we'll be understanding the definition of a service dog and exploring the top 2 things that make a dog a service dog. Then we'll talk about the top 3 traits you should look for in your dog to evaluate whether or not you will be, a successful service dog, as well as the 3 behavioral deal breakers. And make sure you stick around until the end of this video because we'll be covering my top 4 tips for effectively and successfully training a migraine alert dog, or any dog really. Hello everyone, it's Mariana here from Positive and Possum. If you're new here and are getting value from this video, please make sure you click on the thumbs up button, as it really helps me keep this channel, to get going. Now let's get into it. You might be wondering, what actually allows me to state that Floki, my adorable furry lifesaver, is a service dog and not just a pet, right? Okay, let me explain. A service dog is one of the 4 main types of working dogs, also sometimes called assistance dogs, which are first, service dogs, of course. They are individually and extensively trained to perform a specific task to mitigate the owner's particular disability, and are recognized, they're actually the only ones recognized under the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA. If you are still not totally clear on what a service dog is and what it's not, don't worry about it, as I'll be giving much more details on this later in this video. Second, there are emotional support dogs, also known as therapy dogs, who are not recognized by the ADA, nor trained to perform a specific task, but who do often have some basic obedience training, such as understanding sit, down, come, and wait commands, but whose presence do offer affection, emotional, and psychological comfort to their owners. Patients in hospitals, kids in schools, for instance. Thirdly, we have herding dogs, who assist in herding livestock in a farm, typically sheep or cattle. And fourth, we have search and rescue dogs, police dogs, or military dogs, who are highly trained to assist in locating missing persons or evidence, or tracking subjects, disaster response, or detecting illegal objects, for instance. So to illustrate it a bit better, here are 6 quick examples of types of service dogs that exist out there. We have guide dogs for the visually impaired, hearing dogs for people suffering from hearing impairment, mobility assistance dogs to support individuals with mobility impairments or physical disabilities, medical alert dogs such as Floki, are trained to detect and respond to specific conditions such as diabetes, epilepsy, or migraines in my case. Psychiatric service dogs, they physically assist individuals with psychiatric conditions such as, anxiety disorders, PTSD, or depression. And again, they're very different from emotional support dogs, as it is not only the dog's presence that helps the person cope, but rather the fact that the dog has been extensively trained to perform tasks that ease the consequences of a psychiatric disability, such as interrupting panic attacks, reminding the person to take prescribed medications, or keep a disoriented person in an episode from wandering to a hazardous situation such as traffic. And we also have autism assistant dogs who support individuals with the autism spectrum by helping with social interactions or assisting in sensory regulation, for instance. These are just a few examples of the fascinating tasks dogs can learn to perform to help humans. But in general, a service dog is expected to be able to do 2 main things as a consequence of their extensive training. First, to perform tasks directly related to the person's disability to mitigate the effects of that disability. So in the case of people who suffer from migraines, for instance, a couple of examples would be to migraine-alert or to retrieve the medication. The ADA actually defines disability as, quote unquote, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, which leads to the categorization of migraines as a neurological disability. And second, well, to properly behave in public spaces, service dogs need to have some obedience training and public access training as well, since service dogs are the only ones protected under the ADA or granted legal access to public spaces such as restaurants, stores, or transportation, even when dogs are not normally allowed. I initially said that it is generally expected that the service dogs in general are able to perform those two tasks because a service dog certification is actually optional under the ADA, so as to ensure inclusivity and protection. So having a service dog is not a privilege for people to take advantage of, but rather a necessity for people suffering from a disability. Every time a person who does not have a disability abuses the system by misrepresenting a pet as a service dog, it undermines necessary accommodations for individuals with a legitimate need for this assistance. I'm gonna let this sink in for a second, because this brings me to the second part of this video. Not all dogs have the traits required to be a successful service dog, in the same way that not all humans are suited for the same kind of job, and people should respect that. Training a dog that is not suited to be a service dog will mainly lead to lots of wasted time, high levels of frustration, and very little results. And while breeds can play a role in defining some of the dog's behavioral tendencies, this is why you see, for instance, so many Labradors or Golden Retrievers are service dogs, I've come to the conclusion after extensively researching this topic, after reading from a lot of very competent trainers, that other individual factors play a more important role in the end result, actually. Here are the 3 things that you should look for in your dog. For the purpose of migraine scent training specifically, the dog should have an innate desire and willingness to use his nose. It also may seem obvious, but a dog should also have an aptitude for learning, cooperating, and following commands. The behavior I will look for here would be something like, if the dog is confused or under pressure, will he still try to make eye contact and react somehow and cooperate, or will the dog just be lazy, ignore you, be completely unresponsive, anxious? If you feel like your dog falls under the latter category, you will probably not become a good working partner. Now, talking from personal experience, since my dog is a Pomsky, so a Pomeranian and Husky mix, a stubborn and energetic dog is not ideal, but I'm living proof that it is trainable. However, it will require much more time dedication, physical exercise, patience, and consistency on your part than a dog who is naturally more submissive or obedient. So hang in there, all of your efforts will be eventually paid, trust me, but it might take longer. Now that we covered the 3 essential traits that a dog should have to be a successful service dog, let's quickly talk about 3 behaviors that would be actually a real deal breaker for your dog to become a service dog. The first and most important one is if your dog exhibits any sign of aggression to humans, other dogs, other animals, such as growling, snipping, biting, which can definitely happen if your dog has not been properly socialized. It will not be a good working partner and can actually pose a risk to the handler and to others. Secondly, if your dog is generally fearful, shy, or anxious, it would also not be suitable to become a service dog, as it will be actually stressed and struggle to effectively perform tasks in different environments. And as previously mentioned, because this is really important, this is the third point, if your dog gets easily distracted and has difficulty maintaining interest and concentration, he will struggle to perform his duties, despite your best efforts. A good way to go about this would be, for instance, to watch my next videos on the initial steps of training and see how your dog responds. If he consistently has problems learning at these early stages, then you can indeed kind of consider that it's not a good fit. for a service dog, right? So service dogs must be basically calm, resilient, well-mannered. So your dog must have a general personality that is compatible with those traits. And lastly, regarding the dog's age, well, younger dogs tend to, like up to 1-year-old, they're pretty much blank slates that you can shape more easily and faster. Dogs that are up to 5 years old should still be fairly trainable as long as they are naturally motivated and driven. But do keep in mind that service dogs often retire at around 8 to 10 years old, and that training is extensive, lasting for several months. And earlier on in this video, I said I was going to share with you my top 4 training tips when it comes to properly and effectively training a medical alert dog, or any dog really. So if you got to this part of this video, then you probably are interested and motivated to start training your dog. So here are my 4 most helpful tips for successfully doing so. First, what medical alert dogs do for us is just deeply generous. It's a loyal gesture on their part. So we should never ever forget to appreciate and thank our dog for it. So on that note, your dog should think of training as a game. So even though training can sometimes be boring and repetitive to the owner, trust me, I've been there. I'm still there actually. It should always be kept short, enthusiastic, and fun to the dog with lots of rewards. So your dog will mostly be puzzled by what you expect from him. And, you know, if you're not totally upbeat and encouraging, it will only add to his confusion and resistance during training. It is also very helpful to be able to do your dog's favorite activity for a couple of minutes after each session, so you end it in a sweet note. Secondly, scent training will only be as successful as your dog plays a huge part in your life and you both do things together on a regular basis, like regularly doing some obedience training or socializing with other dogs or going for long walks or playing together, for instance. Think of it this way. If you don't do anything of significance to bond with your dog already, how will you actually have the consistency and time required for scent training? And why would your dog be willing to consistently work with you? You know? Third, it's also important to set up your dog for success in general. So if possible, restrict your training area to a small, distraction-free, odor and color-neutral room, especially in the beginning of your dog's training, so the dog can concentrate more easily. Also, train your dog during his meal times, as he will be way more attentive for sure, cooperative, and willing to learn. The poor thing will be hungry. And shift your mindset to not only reprimand your dog when he does something that you don't like, but rather start rewarding him with a treat, playtime, or vocal praise every time he does something that you do like. And last but definitely not least, I would also recommend you to be very attentive and self-aware when with your gestures, words, and vocal tone during the training sessions, to make sure to limit any subliminal cues you may give your dog other than the conscious cues and commands you're actually training him for. This is very important because dogs are really good at noticing very subtle behaviors, and you might end up unintentionally training him to respond to an unconscious behavior of yours instead of the desired behavior you actually want to train him for. And that's why it is important, for instance, for you to feed your dog right on the top of the scent source, so your dog can start getting the idea that he will always get food at the source of the odor, for instance. If you got a bit confused by this very specific example right now, that's okay, as it will become much clearer once you actually start collecting your samples and training your dog, as shown in my next videos. This is just a reminder that, in general, we need to be as clear and consistent as possible with our words, vocal tone, gestures when communicating with our dogs, so as to allow them to really understand what we're asking from them. You know, they don't communicate the same way that we do. So if you like this video and think it is worth your thumbs up, make sure to watch my next video to learn more about how to correctly, collect your scent samples, and to also hit that subscribe button, as it really helps me keep this channel going. Thanks a lot, and see you soon.